It's time to get on Compas on the LA beep.
Boom.
Gilbert, one guy that kind of stood out when I was watching the game was Puka Nacua.
Nacua, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. I just think of Zorro, hua, when the brothers are doing that. But I mean, he was going up against Jazier Taylor, who a lot of people, I'm not including myself in that, but a lot of people think, oh, he could be solid for the Chargers. He did some good stuff, I guess, last year, but he did a pretty good job with him. He kind of bodied him up in a sense, and then kind of jumped out and caught that pass from I think it was Stenson Bennett for the touchdown. Just what have you seen from him in practices, and then obviously from Saturday?
I keep saying this, for the second that DJ down Jeremiah got so excited for a day 3 pick, and he jumped out of his seat pretty much for Puka. I've been keeping my eyes on him. We're listening about it, and then all the beat reporters have been bragging about Puka. And then we went out there on I forget what day, but it was a Rams training camp. And the guy's a big dude. Like, he could be a verse. He kind of like has. I'm not gonna go there, but he has that body like Cooper Kupp, or like you could be outside, inside. He's kind of versatile, and it helps he's getting tips from Cooper Kupp. But also, he's been playing with the first team. I know it's a bad Rams team. You can make the first team on this roster, but you kind of start. Okay, you check off the offseason program, you check off training camp, you make plays. What about the preseason? And then he made a couple plays out there with Stetson Bennett, and with Stetson Bennett, he was kind of rocky at first, but after a while, he kind of found his groove. And the good thing about wide receivers, when a quarterback needs to find his groove, you go to the guy who makes you feel better. And that was Puka. I feel like Puka was the one kind of making plays for everybody. So it's preseason. I remember a year ago, Lance McCutcheon was all the rave, and we all, okay, you got to find a spot for Lance McCutcheon. He did nothing last year. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to get too carried away, but it feels a little different, and it's a good sign for Puka being he's a 5th round pick from BYU, but he's doing all the right things right now.
I was gonna ask you something. Oh, last year was a year when he only carried like 2 tight ends and he had like 8 receivers, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was like 7 or 8 receivers, and he let go a tight end, cut down day. So yeah, 2. It might have been. I think it got to 1 at one point. I forget, but yeah, and they kind of have that same issue this year. But again, not all of them are going to be good players. But Demarcus Robinson is making some plays out there. You got Ben Skoranek, Tutu, Van. Obviously, Cooper's going to make the team, but
I was kind of surprised, but I wasn't surprised. I thought he might let Matthew Stafford get a couple of reps just because Matthew hasn't been out there, and he's been at practice, but I'm saying like his season got cut short last year. It wasn't really a good year. I was a little surprised, but then I mean McVay's been like that kind of the whole time.
You have a couple of scrimmages coming in, like the Raiders and the Broncos, and he'll figure it out then. But yeah, and he's a veteran too, but we'll see. But so far, he's been looking okay, Stafford.
Chargers wise, I mean, they're pretty optimistic about JC Jackson. He honestly, Gilbert, he's only missed like 2 practices. Remember last year he missed kind of through 2 or 3 weeks. He's actually been practicing as of late. They're excited about him. They're hopeful that he's gonna be able to play this season. He's made some plays, but it's kind of like Brandon. I know people give Brandon Staley a lot of flack and everything, but some of the stuff that he says is right. Like he's like, for running backs and safeties and sometimes corners, it's kind of hard to see what you have from them. Why? Because as soon as something happens, they kind of have to stop. He's like, sometimes we ask corners, don't go like not hard, but like be careful with the receiver, like stuff like that. So I feel like once they get game action week 1 against the Dolphins, I'm going to be interested to see if JC's on the field and kind of what he does, because he's covered Gerald Everett at times in practice. He's covered Keenan. He's covered Mike. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does. As far as this team, I guess, Quentin Johnston had a couple of he had 1 or 2 plays where you're kind of questioning a little bit, but then you remember who the quarterback is, and you're like, well, maybe it would have been different if it was somebody else. It's funny. He actually caught that touchdown pass with his shoelaces untied.
Oh,
so wow. I thought that was pretty interesting. But I mean, hey, I can only go off of what I've seen in person and practice, and the kids made plays. When Justin Herbert's his quarterback, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like some of these guys feel the pressure when Justin's a quarterback, and they're like, I got to make plays. I got to do this. But I'm not saying that. Obviously, I'm not saying that he doesn't feel the pressure with Easton, but He's caught some really impressive passes in practice. That's why I'm interested to see kind of what this offense is going to look like. Because like I've said, a lot of this stuff is vanilla. A lot of the stuff that they do is vanilla. So I'm interested to see what they're going to look like in a couple of weeks. But that was pretty cool. And then obviously CJ Okoye, he had a sack on Saturday, and everybody jumped on top of him, and everybody's like, why are they celebrating this sack so much? The kid's never played organized football ever, Gilbert.
It's wild.
He's never played. He was in Africa. He got a chance to come on with the Chargers, and I even asked defensive coordinator Derek Ansley, I'm like, hey, what did you think about CJ Sack? And he's like, this guy's come a long way. It was incredible to see that. I don't know if you guys saw the reaction from the sideline. I think that really answers it for you. And for me, there is a really good culture on the D-line, obviously. But he just said how much he's worked. And he said it was so much fun to watch that kid get a sack and how everybody kind of jumped on him. So it's incredible, Gilbert. His first game and he gets a sack and everything. I'm not saying he'll make the 93-man roster. But I mean, maybe if he continues making plays, they might add him on as a practice squad guy. And the NFL loves those kind of stories where this kid was born in Germany and he came to the U.S. and now he's playing so well and all that stuff. So
yeah, I'm a sucker for that story. I'm like, man, who's this guy? Like, he's never played organized football. Like, that was pretty cool. And I
think we're talking to him on Tuesday.
Okay, and then you start thinking, it's like, man, this, I guess, is this world pipeline that they're doing. The NFL is actually it's been for a couple of years, but I'm like, has it done anything? It's like, actually, there's been a couple of guys, and that's a pretty cool story to hear. And I can't wait for you guys to talk to them, so I can hear a little bit more about it. But in terms of Quentin Johnston, for me, I had my eyes on him because he's the first round pick, and then also you heard all about all the reports or whatever the scouting reports from the draft experts that he has a couple issues with his hands, like a couple drop balls here and there. And when I went to the two Chargers practices, I didn't notice that at all. He was making plays out there. This guy's a stud. I'm like, okay, cool. And then the game comes, and sure enough, that first drop, and I know it was kind of a questionable one. And Fernando, I always go back to our rule that we made in the press box. If you find the way to put your hands on it, and you
touch it, you can catch it.
You could catch it. So that, I think, to me, maybe was more of a drop. The second one was clearly a drop, and that was a bigger play from Easton Stick, right? But to me, that thing, I know I'm not like what's the kind of the word for the people who judge people based on their emotions and how they are. Like, I'm not saying I'm an expert on emotions, but both drops, I know him kind of shaking his head a little too hard, like I should have caught that one. And I'm like, okay, he might be in his head a little bit, but then the big, great positive sign, he got that touchdown. You get that touchdown, you feel good. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I belong in this league. There was a couple of drops, don't worry about it. And I think after that, I'm like, okay, don't get wild takes of a preseason. He can make plays. He's getting open, some good routes, big body receiver. So I think overall, it was still pretty good, impressive debut for me.
The one thing that I think you were at that practice where I told you, watch his get off. Like, he just blasts right through the guy, and sometimes they can't even lay a hand on him. That's why I'm interested to see kind of what the Saints kind of do against him, because the Honey Badger, Marshawn Lattimore, some of these guys are probably go up against him. But man, like, sometimes they can't even get a hand. Like, even Asante, who's a little feisty kind of pit bull kind of player, he tries to get his hands on him, and he kind of like shifts and moves around. And that's what Eric Williams, our compa, he wrote about the other day for Fox Sports, is that Quentin tries to use basketball moves when he's out on the field. I don't know if you noticed, but on that first one, I know he dropped it, but on that first one, he was kind of shielding the cornerback away from him, and he kind of tried to catch it out here. He tried to body it.
Yeah.
But if he would have put his hands out, like Mike used to do that. Mike Williams used to body catches, and then all of a sudden he started catching more out there. If he would have caught it out here with his hands, he would have made that grab. But the thing is, he tried to body it and it kind of fell off. So, but yeah, no, I think Quentin has a bright future. I really think that it's going to do him some good to be behind Keenan and Mike this season. There's no pressure on him because you still have Josh Palmer, you have Keenan, you have Mike, but they're going to obviously call him to make some plays. And obviously he's going to have to step up, especially because him and if it kind of feels like him and the kid from Seattle kind of feels like they're kind of on a level on their own right now.
Yeah, Jackson Smith and
yeah, Jigba. I know I've heard some stuff about Zay Flowers, but I'm still questioning how 8's going to get him the ball and how all that's going to go. But But and I mean, obviously, I should question a little bit too. Geno Smith had a good year last year, but can he repeat it? Well, I mean, you were in Seattle. Do you think he can repeat it?
Yeah, I was talking to Pete Carroll, humble brag there, and I couldn't even get the question out. And I'm like, hey, so Geno Smith, oh man, oh Gilbert, you wouldn't believe this guy. Like he is now the full-time starter, taking all the reps, and
Oh,
it does
Gary, it's
wonders.
Gilbert. It doesn't matter what your name is.
No, you got my name right. You didn't say Gilberto, but you went with Gilbert, and he was like, okay, you got my question, and I think it makes a difference being the starter and not splitting with Drew Lock. Drew Lock's still over there, by the way. But you could tell like he is the leader of the franchise and good command. People respect him, and he was making plays with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And by the way, it's really fun to watch DK Metcalf in person. That was the one the
He's
biggest
huge.
takeaway. Yeah, he's a monster.
That's why, like, I thought like him and Tyler Lockett, it's like Tom and Jerry. Like one's like Mighty Mouse and the other one's like humongous. Like just so funny to see. But
by the way, I kind of felt like I don't know, like when I got to talk to DK too. Seahawks, great coverage, by the way. Shout out to them. And I started shaking DK's hand. I'm like, hey man, sorry to keep staring at your grills here, but I need to ask you. Like he has like a couple it's like a fang grill. Like,
yeah, I've seen those.
Okay, so it's not like a full like a tooth, with a diamond tooth, but it's like a fang. I'm like, where'd you get that? He's like, oh, I went to Odell's guy and he hooked me up. I'm like, oh, cool story there. So
he sometimes uses a pacifier. It looks like he has a pacifier as his mouthpiece. Sometimes.
Oh, really?
He's done that before in the past.
It's like a diamond thing or what?
No, just a pacifier. Like what kids use to suck on?
Yeah.
He sometimes uses what it looks like a pacifier
as a mouth.
As a mouthpiece. So like like the outside looks like a pacifier. Obviously inside it's a mouthpiece, but definitely interesting